to it. Welcome back to your Flip Classroom and our continuing discussion of the growth of the French Revolution and actually the really beginning of the French Revolution. Or some historians argue that it's the beginning of the French Revolution, this thing called the storming of the Bastille, right? So we're going to go ahead and dive headfirst into that stuff using a flip that I actually recorded last year, which is phenomenal. Like, I don't think you understand how good some of these flips that I recorded last year about the French Revolution are. But I'll see y'all in a second. Y'all go ahead and watch this bad boy, and it's nice and short. But I'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a good one. Behind closed doors, they're freaking out, all right? So behind closed doors, Louis is being bombarded by his brothers, by other leaders of state being like, you know whose fault this is? You know whose fault this whole thing went down? It's that guy Jacques, right? Well, there's this dude named Jacques Necker, right? N-E-C-K-E-R, Jacques Necker, that actually was a Swiss finance minister that was leading the Estates General, trying to fix all the deficit spending problems and the bad harvest problems that are hitting the financial issues of France so hard in the wallet, right? Leading to the need to call the Estates General. It was Jacques' idea to call it, right? And so the thing about it, though, is he's suggesting really intense ideas on how to fix things. He's allowing the National Assembly to exist. And the brothers of Louis, like Louis XVI, and his wife even as well, are like, maybe we should fire Jacques because he's letting things get out of hand. And what ended up happening is Louis dismisses Jacques Necker. He fires him and stuff like that on the advice of other people. And what ends up happening, though, is rumors begin to swirl around Paris because of that. Remember, ideas travel faster than disease, right? Rumors began to swarm Paris that troops are going to be brought in to arrest the National Assembly after Jacques Necker is fired, right? That troops are coming in also to suppress the riots that have been going down in Paris. So something that you don't realize also, because we've been talking about the revolution preparing itself and bowling over in Versailles, is that back in Paris and in other cities like it, right, the revolution's borderline already started. There have been riots, y'all. People have been, beat up in the streets and stuff like that. There have been bake shops that have been raided for, food. There's a factory that the people heard a rumor that he was going to fire a bunch of guys, so they, burned the factory down. And so, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in Paris. The people are already angry and really, really, hyped up and really, really tense. It's like, y'all going in a rally. You know what I mean? So, rumors are swarming Paris, though, that now that Jacques has been fired and the people loved Jacques, right, that he's been fired and that the National Assembly might get arrested after the tennis court oath, the people are freaking out, right? And then all of a sudden they start seeing the military move around, right? The military's moving around and being brought in, looking like they might be being brought in to shoot people and suppress a riot or something like that. So what is the revolutionary French citizen, the urban worker, the regular guy that's not at the Estates General, what does he do in this state of fear? He's like, you know what I need? You know what I need? You know what I need? We know what we need to get? We need to get guns, right? So let's go get guns, right? Let's go get guns so we can defend ourselves if the military decides to try and come at us, right? And so they all freak out. And a mob of 800 people starts hunting for guns, right? Now, and on this day, on July 13th, or 12th, 13th, and 14th, a roaming mob of 800 Parisians, right? 800 people from Paris start looking for weapons to defend themselves because they are getting so freaked out, right? They're getting so freaked out. And then by July 14th, they start storming into these areas, right? The July 13th, though, the interesting thing is where they go after first, right? Over 800 people actually originally went to go and try to find guns in this place called the Hotel des Invalides. And the Hotel des Invalides actually looks like this. It's actually a very beautiful building in the middle of Paris. I've been there. It's very, very cool. I was in this courtyard this year, and actually I was there on Bastille Day, which is their 4th of July, which is a big deal. Now, and I went on to this entire courtyard, and they had helicopters landing and military personnel and fighter pilots and stuff like that all out there for the French Foreign Legion and also for the French military. This is actually a museum now of French military history, which is really cool. But at the time, in 1789, it was actually a retirement home for aged French military officers, right? But the thing about it is the people knew that as being an arm of the military that there were probably guns there. So they actually raided this complex, and underneath it, they found items they wanted to take. They looted the entire thing, and they also found hundreds and hundreds of rifles, as you can see them coming out with these rifles and guns and stuff like that. But the problem was, though, y'all, you got an issue. Those rifles had no bullets, and they had no gunpowder. So they had to figure out where that was going to come from, right? They were like, where do we get the bullets and the gunpowder? And then it all clicked into their mind. They were like, wait a minute. If I were the military, where would I put the gunpowder? I would put it inside of a thing that's meant to keep people locked away, right? So they went after this place, right? The Bastille, right? Look at the Bastille, right? This 8-turreted, massive Middle Ages fortress, right? So the Bastille was this really big concrete fortress, right? That originally in the Middle Ages was built to actually like keep people out, right? It was actually built as a protectionary device for if people, like foreign armies were raiding Paris, right? And it was a big fortress, right? Well, the thing about it is if it's built to keep people out, then it can easily be built to keep people in. So they had actually converted it by the 1700s into a prison, and some very famous prisoners have been locked up here. Voltaire, the Enlightenment thinker, was locked up there once for actually talking crap about Noble, and another very famous guy named the Marquis de Sade was actually locked up there as well. If you want to know why the Marquis de Sade is famous, just ask me in class, and I'll tell you why the Marquis de Sade is famous and why he's like an infamous prisoner that got locked up in there. Fun fact, the Marquis de Sade apparently used to go up on top of the turret up here and be like, they're torturing me, come help me, this is awful, please, like, storm this place, there's bullets in here. And so then the guards were like, dude, can you stop? Like, so like now going into it though, what ends up happening is the people of Paris, that big mob of people, that 800 like strong mob of people, realizes that that's where the bullets and the gunpowder is, right? That's where the gunpowder is. It's inside the Bastille. So they decide to go and storm that bad boy, right? They want to go storm inside of it and take anything they can get their hands on. So the mob of Paris stormed into the Bastille on July 14th, 1789. Now, many people argue that this is the beginning of the revolution because it's the beginning of popular support and violent action, right? On July 14th, 1789, they rushed into the Bastille, freed the prisoners inside, got the gunpowder, got the bullets, not after killing several people. So, like, what ended up actually happening is, like, it's a Bastille, y'all. It's like, it's a very large fortress. So do you think that they're just going to open the door and let them in and be like, hello, poor people, come on in and take all the bullets and gunpowder and free the prisoners? No. They actually locked the doors first, right? They locked the doors and pulled up the drawbridge. So there was a moat around the outside of the Bastille, right? A moat that actually went around it. And so, literally, they actually, the rioters, like, took a plank of wood and put it over the moat and were, like, tightrope walking over it. And they went up to the door and they were sliding notes through it to the warden, right? Y'all know what a warden is, a guy that runs a prison, right? They were sliding a note through the door and being like, hey, read this. Like, so like passing a note in class, they were just like, hey, read that. And so the warden was like reading it. It was like, open the door and give us all the stuff. And the warden wrote back. He's like, no. So yeah, he like refused to do it. So they like jumped up on top of the drawbridge and used saws to saw through the chains and stuff like that. The drawbridge comes flying down, actually crushes one of the rioters that is there, right? Underneath the entire like drawbridge. And they rip the warden out and rip his assistant out. Y'all, and then they kill them, and then they put their heads on sticks, right? Like so, and they begin to parade through Paris with them. They take all the gunpowder, they take all the bullets, they free all of the prisoners as well, and the Marquis de Lafayette, in that moment, takes control of this new thing called the National Guard, right? This new militia that is being formed at the storming of the Bastille with heads on sticks out front. One of them actually had straw shoved into the mouth of it and stuff like that because he was a guy that was in charge of taxing bread. So they literally like, oh, you think you're so hungry now? Like, so like they literally, though, actually killed these people, put their heads on sticks, and have now formed a revolutionary military. And every single year they actually celebrate this thing in Paris. You can actually see the video that I am actually popping up. They like shoot fireworks off the edges of the Eiffel Tower and stuff like that. And I was there this past summer, which is really, really cool. But they do it to celebrate this moment right here, right? Where they actually stormed into the Bastille, destroyed the entire structure, demilitarized it, took everything away, liberated the prisoners inside, and they did it while actually participating in violent action. The Bastille is no longer there. It's actually a really big pillar that's there now. And they then deconstructed it, and it's now just an open park area. But they celebrate this day every single year on July 14th, 1789, with a fabulous fireworks display and a military parade down the Champs-Elysees. So, like, now, it's one of my favorite things to do if you ever get a chance to go to the actual, like, if you ever get a chance to go to Paris during this time, you should definitely go and do it. But really, really quickly, let's jump over, though, because we got a couple of other things to talk about, because now the revolution has begun, right? Now, before we can talk about the revolution itself, we have to talk about the 4 phases of the revolution. So let's jump over to my whiteboard real quick and let's talk about a couple things. All right, y'all, so when we're over here at our whiteboard, we're now going to talk a little bit about the phases of the French Revolution, right? Now, you can look this up, Google this all you want. Academics highly disagree on what years the revolution spans. Some believe it went from 1789 to 1799. Some people believe it went from 1789 to 1815. I'm a 1789 to 1815 person because when you read enough about this stuff, I consider Napoleon a part of the revolution, whereas a lot of people don't. All right, so like now, like we're looking at this, though, we need to understand, though, the growth and expanse in this revolution. In this class, we're going to break the revolution down into 4 basic phases, right? So you got from 1789 to 1793, which is going to be what is known as the liberal phase, right? You got the liberal phase, which is going to be like when people like the Marquis de Lafayette are helping lead, right? Charles Talleyrand is another famous guy that's helping lead. And they want to just change things a little bit, right? They want to keep the king alive. They want a constitutional monarchy, and you'll see that as the flip progresses and stuff like that. And they want this kind of stuff, right? They want simple change. Things will be a cultural change in France. Then from 1793 to 1794, you have what's known as the radical phase, right? The radical phase, also known as the Reign of Terror, right? And you'll notice right here it's very short-lived, right? It's very short-lived. It's only a year long because literally what ends up happening in the Thermidorian reaction is the guy that leading it ends up dead. He actually tries to shoot himself and stuff like that. It's a whole thing. But it's also defined by violence, right? The Reign of Terror, right? Because they're literally trying to use fear and they're like executing people all over France. Like 30,000 people die. It's crazy, right? That's why it's so short-lived. Then you go from 1794 to 1799, and that is the Directory phase, which we will barely talk about in this class because it is so boring. All right, so yeah, no, it's so boring. I don't want to talk about the Abbé Sieyès and Charles Talleyrand being in charge for that long. That's boring. So like now, instead though, we will focus though on the 1799 to 1815 phase, which is known as the Napoleonic phase, right? The Napoleonic phase is when Napoleon Bonaparte is going to come into power and he's going to lead France into its first empire period, right? So the big thing about it is make sure you get those phases down because we're going to track our way through the revolution using these phases, right? But we're going to start off with that liberal phase, okay? So what's going to happen now, though, is I'm going to go clip in this other flip right quick and I'm going to let that kind of wrap up everything and talk to you all about this stuff tomorrow when I see you. But I'll see y'all then. Ugh. Three big things that you need to know about the image of the revolution and stuff like that, where it's going, how you know what's going to be happening and stuff like that. Now, the two first big things that we got to talk about, you need to jot these things down in whatever form you feel like, right? The first thing that we're going to actually do is we're going to jot down the three guiding words of the revolution, right? The Revolutionary Party and the revolutionary people, the National Assembly that hates Louis's guts right now and has now officially started the revolution, and aka like their version of the Revolutionary War, but it'll be almost like a civil war because it's going to have an inside of their own country. It'll be like pro-revolutionary people with Marquis de Lafayette and mostly third estate members versus these anti-revolutionary people in the sense of the nobility and the royals and things like that. Well, they had three guiding words that they always were like, these are the things that we believe in. And it was liberté, égalité, fraternité. And what that means in French, also ask Mr. Mathern to say this. He thinks it's hilarious to say it with like a trumped up French accent. The thing about it though in general is it's liberty, equality, and fraternity, aka brotherhood, right? Brotherhood amongst people that actually believe in this revolution. They would have that on banners and on signs, and they would parade it through the streets. Liberty, equality, fraternity. And they also wore certain things to demonstrate that they were pro-revolution, right? One of them is this thing. It's called a tricolor cockade, right? And it's actually three different specific colors. Red representing liberty, red represented liberty, and the red and the blue also represented the old colors of Paris, and the white right here in the middle represented the king and the nobility, and of course like the keeping of the royals, but it was a revolutionary symbol. It's a pin. It looked like about like that big, and you would wear it on your hat usually, or you would wear it on your chest somewhere, right? And also the other one that you would oftentimes see people wear during the revolution is a red liberty cap, right? They would actually wear a red cap that was designed to be actually a specific color, one being that of red, and also what's really, really cool is you can actually see this red liberty cap in the United States of America. If you look at the Senate seal of the U.S., this image of a red kind of like Smurf looking hat kind of a thing has actually always been very, very big as representing liberty. As you can see one right there on the United States Senate seal, right? So this image of that red cap has been around for a really long time. It actually is descendant of ancient Rome. Ancient Roman slaves, when they were freed, were given one of these caps to wear to demonstrate that they were no longer a slave anymore, right? And so the French Revolution is like, we will take ownership of this image and we will no longer be slaves to our former oppressive government under the rulership of the Bourbons, and we demand liberty, equality, fraternity, right? Knowing those images is really, really big to your understanding of this revolution, right? So once this has began, though, once the storming of the Bastille has happened and everything starts going down, a new document is written as well, where the Revolutionary Party, the National Assembly, outlines what they believe all men in France and men in France deserve. And it's called the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which is a very intense document name because it's the Declaration of the Rights of Man. And citizenry, unfortunately, right? When actually you look at the document name itself, it goes the Declaration of the Rights of Man. And citizenry. I like Declaration of the Rights of Man because it sounds like a heavy metal band that maybe Mr. Roddy's in or something like that. But it was actually a really, really big image to kind of use as their form of a Bill of Rights, right? You had the English Bill of Rights under William and Mary. You had the American Bill of Rights after their revolution. And so the French decide to write one of their own. And guess who wrote this document, right? This is a full-on revolution now because we have a document stating our new rights. The person two people write this down who wrote this document was none other
than the Marquis de Lafayette, which you can see right here, and him helping lead the revolution. And look what's on his hat, a tricolor cockade, right? Demonstrating he's pro-revolution. He wrote it along with Thomas Jefferson, who came to France to help him write it, and it literally has a preamble, and it outlines the basic rights of human beings under the new Revolutionary Party.